When Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was, he answered it pretty much in the simplest of terms. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So that's what we are trying to do here at Northeast. In simple terms, we want to love God and we want to love others. So whether it's growing deeper in his love, or discovering his will for our lives, or being challenged to be better people or more responsible, it's always helpful to do these things together. So we thank you for joining us in today's Together time, and we hope you'll be blessed in a very special way.
Good morning. I am happy to be here with you this morning, whether in the assembly or downstairs or those who are joining us online. It is a beautiful, beautiful day, just a little bit cool to have an outdoor service, which we wanted to do. But we will be having that cookout, as Rob mentioned, and anybody is invited to come, guest, whether you brought something or not, to share in that time of fellowship. It is, in a lot of ways, it's an exciting time to be in the current context we are, because we are in the process of kind of breaking out from the long, dark, difficult winter that we've been through the last year. And in that light, next week we will begin a new sermon series called Out of Exile. And this obviously is very timely in terms of what is happening now, what's happening in our worship services next week as some changes go about. And we'll be focusing there in Jeremiah chapter 29. I encourage you to read Jeremiah, and especially 29, as we get ready for this series. And next week, Dr. Scott Sager, we will be honored to have him here with us from Lipscomb University. And he is the Vice President of Church Engagement, Vice President of Church Services at Lipscomb. Very, very busy man. And look forward to having him here with us next week. So put that on your calendars. You'll be getting some more information about that very soon. So you made some choices this morning, right? Everybody, think of the thousands of choices that we have. Even every day you're making a choice, right? You're making a choice right now whether to pay attention to what I say or not, right? Some of you made the choice to wear certain clothes this morning. I was looking at Rob and I thought, well, it looked like we just planned to wear the same shirt today. It was a choice. It wasn't a big choice, but we all make choices, right? Thousands of choices every week, and some of those choices matter. Some of those choices do not matter. You see the little boy here in front of all this candy. So many choices, so many offers. Think of all the options that are out there for you every week, every day. You ever eaten at the Cheesecake Factory? Raise your hand. All right. So this is not an advertisement for the Cheesecake Factory, but I will tell you this. Whenever we go there, I have a hard time choosing what to eat. That menu is unbelievable. Have you ever seen a menu that big at a restaurant? And so I struggle with what I'm going to eat. And the amazing thing about that is that almost everything you eat there, whatever it is really, really good. So that's a choice. But you know, there are lots of choices that matter a lot more than whether I'm going to have the chicken or the fish or the beef, or whether I'm even going to shave my beard someday or not. Jeannie yesterday said, nice, a little diversion. Did we get that on camera? That was all planned. I want to let y'all know that was all planned. It's to get your attention. So I get out of the shower yesterday, and after I shaved and shower, I didn't shave the whole thing. And Jean says, "Oh, you didn't shave your beard." It's like, I thought you loved my beard. And at one time she told me she did, but she's gotten tired of it. So she wants me to make the choice to shave the beard. So it may come sometime it may not. Choices. Two women that we've been studying in this series made a choice. There were some things they didn't control and didn't have any choice over. But I want to talk today and look at the rest of the story of Ruth from this standpoint of making choices. What do we choose? Not only what do we choose, but what difference does it really make? In the lives of these two women, choices were very important. Some of those choices were by circumstance that they just pretty much had to make. When Naomi and her family left Bethlehem to go to Moab, that was a choice, but it was a choice out of necessity because they were starving. They were famine refugees who left their home to a new place they did not know at great risk in a lot of ways. So these two women, Naomi and Ruth, as we've studied, have been brought together in Moab. And so a choice was made about marriage in the lives of Ruth and her sister, and they were married for 10 years, and then their husbands died. And Naomi's husband died, so there we have 3 widows in Moab who are destitute, who are at the lowest rung in terms of where they would be on the social ladder in that day, whether they be in Moab or whether they be in Bethlehem. And in Naomi's eyes, she felt not only powerless in a lot of ways, she felt let down by God. We talked about faithfulness too in this series, and we've asked the question, is God faithful? Is He faithful in every situation and circumstance in your life when on your blind side you don't see Him, or the work that you see, as in the case of Naomi, you feel like God has given her, she felt like God had given her a raw deal. And she didn't see God's goodness in a clear way. But we've made the point in this series, in the first lesson, that faithfulness is honest. Whether we're struggling, however we want to express our hurt or our grief or our disappointment in God, it's important that we do that. Faithfulness is honesty, because God knows how we hurt and how we feel and how we struggle anyway. Faithfulness is also being loyal. It's going the extra mile. Faithfulness, even when we can't see the plan and God is on our blind side and don't see His work, it keeps His promises, as we talked about last week. Love, faithfulness, loyalty in all those circumstances. Choices. If one thing comes through loud and clear in the story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz, it is this, and we might call this the main point of today's lesson, and that is this. One choice, a single choice, can make a huge, astounding difference. And that can be applied to good things or bad things. That can be applied to bad choices we make, and we face consequences. How many people bound in addictions today and struggling in that dark reality today began that journey by a choice? How many people living in toxic relationships that are hurting them or their family? How many of those situations began with a choice? And then there are all those little choices we make day by day. Some of them are important. Some of them aren't so important, but they have consequences, right? I'd been dreading going to my annual physical this year because I figured my numbers when they did my blood work wouldn't be as good, and lo and behold, it wasn't as good. And so, no matter what the doctor said, no matter what I know to be right for me, for some reason, COVID has just had this kind of impact on me that I am not eating the way I should be eating. I'm on cholesterol medication anyway. I haven't been exercising the way I should be exercising, and so I knew my cholesterol numbers were not going to be as good, or my triglycerides, and so I was right. But I wasn't surprised because I've been making some choices, gained 5 pounds, and I attribute that to cheesecake. Right now, I've told you this before. But anyway, that's a choice, right? That's a choice. But now think about the life of Ruth and think about what transpires in her life. And from the reading this morning, we see how the story ends, but that story began with one first choice. I'm committed to God, Ruth says. I'm committed to you, Naomi, Ruth says. It's a choice, it's a promise, and she acted on that. It was a choice when she went to glean in the fields of Boaz. It was a choice she made when Naomi, once she is revived with the care and concern that's shown by Boaz, it's Ruth who makes the choice to up the ante in what she asked of Boaz. And I made the point last week, I think all Naomi had in mind here, knowing the law, knowing the circumstance, she was just hoping for a simple marriage for Ruth to be taken care of. But Ruth makes the choice to up the ante when Boaz is holding all the cards. And that's a risky choice that she made. But she did that. And she did that for many reasons, but she did that, among other things, because she wasn't satisfied with the bare minimum. She wasn't satisfied with just doing enough to get by. She wasn't satisfied with average. She wasn't satisfied in her mind in terms of what the possibilities could be. She was not satisfied with second best. She sought something greater and worked hard and made choices to accomplish that. I think I've shared with you before Gene Smethers and how he's told about told a lot of people about his first year in college. And his first year in college was pretty much wasted. He'll tell you that. He spent his time in the student center, playing cards and games and foosball or whatever you did back in that day. And, he goes home and his dad says, something has to be different here. So he enters the military, the Air Force. They do a test, and it turns out he's one of these outstanding linguist students that knows language, and he is one of an elite group of people who are chosen to go to Yale University and learn Mandarin, the Mandarin Chinese language in like a very short time. He made good grades when he was in high school, but when he got to college, he just kind of, wasn't going to be, whatever the motivation was, it wasn't there. But later on, he does great things in the Air Force, goes to college and makes straight A's. It never was about, in that instant, Gene, it never was about him not being capable. In a lot of cases, it's not the fact that we can't make that choice or do whatever we need to do to get to a better place in our lives or to bring about better things in other people's lives. It's just a matter of us being satisfied with the status quo or being average or not doing our best, and then sometimes somehow thinking that the results are going to be different when all we're putting into something is a little bit. And if I'm just putting a little bit or not reaching out or taking a risk or stepping out or going above and beyond or just doing the bare minimum, it should not surprise me that the results are what they are. And a lot of times there's a choice between surviving and just getting by or thriving. I ask you, if you haven't read the article from this past Wednesday from our shepherds, take a look at that article if it's still in your inbox from Wednesday. A lot of good thoughts in that article, but the main gist of the article was this. When it comes right down to it in so many things, we get out of something what we put into it, right? Another way to say that is we reap what we sow. And that applies in my relationships, that applies in what I get out of my involvement with the church family, including our church family here at Northeast. If we put a little bit into it, a lot of times we'll get a little bit out of it, right? Or are we just looking for what I can get or what I can receive versus what I can do or what I can offer to others and going the extra mile? You know, a marriage is not going to be successful if both husband and wife in that marriage, they're looking at that marriage situation like, look, this is what I want you to do for me. And that's all they're thinking about. Someone told me this week about a reality show. I have not seen it yet, but they were explaining the premise to me, which I thought was very interesting, called Marriage at First Sight. How many of you have watched that? Raise your hand really high. I didn't. It's a reality show. And in this reality show, they take couples, and I don't know how they take these couples or how they go through the process to get them to this point, and that is they agree at first sight to be legally married, and then they go through a process with counselors and people working with them, ministers and others, as they go through this process of, at the end of the show, I guess the idea is, do you want to stay married? Or do you want to separate and have a divorce? Now, I'm not getting off into the ethical implications of having a show where people do that and then, okay, it's, to get divorced. But it still is an interesting concept. Did you know right now in the world today, 1/2 of marriages are arranged. Half of them. Like 97% in India. But you think of other regions of the world where they have arranged marriages. And the interesting thing is, in these arranged marriages, a lot of them end up being very successful. And people end up being very happy. But it's not because they're necessarily as compatible as they could be. It's because they work at it. They try to make it work. Now, in some cases, they don't have any other choice and have miserable marriages, but that's not my point. My point is, if you're married, what are you putting into it? Or if you feel like God is calling you to marriage at some point, what will you settle for? Ruth had expectations and she had standards. And even Boaz himself said on one occasion, he said, you could have you could have had some choices out there that might have been a little easier for you. But you didn't choose that. Here's another thing about making good choices and making the right choice. Many times when we do that, we are bringing out the best in others. And that's what Ruth did. You think about how she influenced Boaz. And I know a lot of people want to look at this story and just look at it like this man Boaz, he comes in and he saves the day, and he's the hero, and I guess in some ways he is. But that's just not what the story's about. It's about her commitment to doing what is right, expecting more and asking more of others to do not just what might be expected, but to do greater than what might be expected. And so by the time we get to the 4th chapter in this story, after Ruth has asked him to marry her, but doing it in a way that pulls in these two laws that were maybe related, but they were still distinct. But she makes that bold risk in pulling those two together. And he responds. She wasn't just impressing him. She was influencing him. And she is calling upon him in a humble way to do something even better or greater. And here's the point related to that. As you make this choice or these choices that are the right choices based on your commitment to God, and you act on those choices, you have an opportunity to create in the lives of others such a difference that you can give them hope or revive them or give them a sense of renewal, and do it in a way that one choice, one step creates another, then another, then another. It's what we call the domino effect, and we have the pictures of the dominoes here. You can start that chain reaction. One choice. One act. There was a family that made the choice to invite me to church. I made a choice to attend. And there are a lot of other factors in terms of choices that led me to this point in my life when I can look at a wife that I met who was a committed Christian, and I look at a family that was created, but that all began with some choices, right? And Naomi, I mean, she had her grief. And when you lose your loved one, when you lose 2 sons and a husband, you never completely get over that, do you? I mean, you still feel that in some ways, probably the rest of your life. And I've talked to some of you who've lost children, for example. It's not easy. And in a lot of ways, there's always still a hole, a void, an emptiness that may never go away. But even in that grief or even in that difficulty, there is a way beyond, and there is still a way out, and there is still hope, and there is still something that can happen that can give your life purpose and meaning, and then you can do that in the lives of others. A couple of weeks ago, we watched the video that was put together about City Gospel Mission, and I was so impressed with the man who was interviewed in that video. Those of you who saw it remember the man who was interviewed. Talking about when he had gotten at that lowest point, and then this ministry reached out to him in a way that has totally changed his life. One choice. One choice, one choice, one choice, step by step. So when we encourage you, us, to stretch our comfort zones a little bit and get into a place where we might, even in a challenging way, do something that will reach out to someone in a situation like that. Listen, that's not just to give you something to do. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make a choice and then to do something going above and beyond that may make that difference in the life of somebody else and renew their hope and have them looking at things in a totally different way. Would you put Naomi in that category? I would. And so we come to this place in the reading today when the women of the town, they're speaking to her. And they say, this boy, this son, they're not talking about Boaz here. They are talking about her grandson. And they say, he's your kinsman redeemer. He will renew your life. And then they go on to say something that I think is so bold and so audacious in some ways. And that is, this woman, Ruth, this young lady who made the commitment to stand by you through thick and thin and be your advocate and to be your voice and to pay a price and to go through difficulties in the way that she has with such a risk. Ruth, a poor widow from another country, stepping up, and the way she does it. Everything is uphill for her. It's not easy, but she does it. And so then we see these women saying to Naomi, she's better than 7 sons. It isn't just hyperbole. They mean it. They mean it. She's worth more than 7 sons. And so here is Naomi. You remember how she came back from Moab. God has made my life bitter. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. I am empty. And now she cradles this baby in her arms. She had given up hope. And it was revived. And all of this story, the way it turns out, it starts with a choice. And here's my last point this morning. When we make the choice and make the choice with God, and there are so many areas that this affects, here's the exciting thing about it. When we make that choice, sometimes one choice that builds upon another choice and another, is that when we do that, we become partners in the work with God and partners in His plan. Think about that for a minute. Think about that. We sometimes look at a verse like Romans 8:28 that says God causes all things to work for the good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. So that when we make the choices that even are sometimes very costly, we can still know, even when we can't see God in the front or clearly, and sometimes we may wonder about our blind side, that He is there, He is present, He is faithful, He is working things out, even when I don't see it, and even in those times I don't see it clearly. What is God's will for me? What do I need to do in this situation? Listen, sometimes all we need to do is right now do the next right thing. Just the next right thing. And what is so astounding about this point is that when we go back to chapter 2 in the book of Ruth, when she first goes to that field to glean, what is she thinking about? She's thinking about nothing except taking care of her mother-in-law and just getting food to live on and survive. She's thinking about that commitment. And this text says, I love the way it states it here in chapter 2. As it turned out, as it turned out, almost as to say, by chance, she found herself working in the field of Boaz. Sometimes you don't know what it means. Sometimes you don't know what it will affect. But if you are committed to taking the next right step and doing the next right thing and making the next right choice because of your faith in God and His faithfulness, it will work out. What if? What if? What if Ruth had not made that promise and commitment, that choice? What if she had not done that? Would Naomi have been revived? And if Naomi had not been revived, what would have happened in terms of what would have happened in their lives? Well, I will tell you right now, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it would have played out. But I do know this. I know that one choice can make a huge difference. And one choices become other choices as we look at the review here of these points. As we make choices, we shouldn't be satisfied with the bare minimum or do just enough to get by. And when we live that way and make those choices and go the extra mile, God will use us to make others better, to bring the best out in others. Our very presence will do that in the lives of some. And when we do that, we can know confidently, even when I can't see God's hand in it all or how it will exactly turn out, that I'm partnering with Him in great works. God's going to get it done. He is. Micah 5:2 says, "But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you were small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come from me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose orange are from of old, from ancient times." God's going to do it. God's going to do what He wants to do, and He will not violate your free will. But when it comes to God accomplishing His purposes as a sovereign God in this world, He's going to do it. And the fact is, and this is humbling, He's going to do it with you or without you. But you're going to be a lot better off for getting on the train and others. And the amazing thing about this story is that when we read this genealogy in the book of Ruth at the end, and this simple statement is made before that genealogy, they had a son. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, who was the father of David. David, the king who was to come. 300 years, not 300 years in the future, but a couple of generations in the future. And then when this statement is made in the book of Micah, it's made 300 years after David. You and I know from a New Testament perspective who's being talked about here in Micah 5:2. It's Jesus the King. And I think, did they have any idea? As you read the genealogy of Jesus in the book of Matthew, whose name is right there? Ruth's. And it began, her playing this role in God's plan began with one choice. And so I close by asking this to you. What will you choose? Who will you choose? What one thing can you do? Make the decision right now that will honor God, make your life better, and make the lives of those around you better. It might be the choice to commit your life to Jesus, to put your faith in Him and be baptized. It may be to make some stark choices right now to turn some things around. It may be you just want to dig a little deeper into God's will for you. Whatever that is, never ever forget the power of one choice.
There's an old hymn that speaks to our desire for you as we say goodbye today and thank you for joining us. It says, God be with you till we meet again. By His counsel's guide uphold you, and with His sheep securely fold you. God be with you till we meet again, till we meet at Jesus' feet. Please let us know if we can help you in any way as you seek to dig deeper into finding your place in God's plans. He has wonderful things in store for you, and I encourage you to answer His call. Feel free to check us out at northeastchurch.com. In the meantime, take care, and God bless you and yours.
It's who you are, it's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am, it's who I am, it's who I am.